Hey guys, welcome back. This video is going to be a little bit of a speed drawing video just due to the length of time. So what I want to do is create a new layer, call it shading, select a color that's not as dark as your black line, make it a gray layer. Pick a slightly larger brush, this time I went with about a 10-point brush. And now my focus is to decide upon the lighting source, which is what you're going to need to do as well. And notice yet again, I am starting with the head. I'm taking the layer and lowering it below the pencil layer because I want my darker black lines to be the primary line at the top. And the reason really is that I want I want the shading to have the type of feeling that you would get normally on paper. When you do a comic piece, usually your external hard lines, for some reason, they always turn out like this. They're always darker, more pronounced, more defined. And when you do your shading will always have a lighter tone to it. And the reason is because it adds a little bit of depth. Now, granted, once you're done inking the work, you will usually tend to lose that level of depth, but it helps the artist at this point to separate the dark line from the shading lines and still help you keep the entire image in perspective. The main point for adding the shading obviously really is just to help define your shapes, to give it some more mass, some more weight, add to the power of the figure. Now, I will and have already adjusted the brush once or twice at this point in terms of size. And the reason is some of the areas do require a slightly finer detail to go into and basically render out the shape in minor areas because you can't use the same tool for every application. You're not going to be able to hammer in a nail effectively with a screwdriver. So you do need to vary your brush sizes from time to time. With my approach to shading, I treat it as two different things. Number one, it is where shadows are cast, but also I use my shading to help pull out reflections that might be on costumes and skin. Now you're sitting here and you're saying to me, but this dude is completely naked or he has a coat of something on his skin that keeps him safe from the elements and he looks like he's naked. And you're right. At this point, this dude has absolutely no costume on him. We're going to be doing the costuming later. But what I wanted to do was map everything out in a really organized fashion for you. This way, we didn't get overly confused. A lot of this really is the way my workflow goes. But I really decided that for a couple of things, it would be better for me to basically make adjustments for the tutorial version. Now, when you are putting your shading in, you're adding your shadows, you're picking your highlights, your hot points. Keep in mind all those little art lessons that you took where your art instructor had you take a ball and you drew the ball and then you did the shading and then you did the highlights. What you want to do is approach all the anatomy with the same thing in mind, but realize that the basic shapes here are kind of the same, but they're stretched out. So remember that when you are adding your shading. Now, when I'm doing the shading, you'll notice that there is some decent pencil technique going on. When you are adding your shading, if you really wanted to, if you look at the character's right leg, the left leg on our side, I outlined a shape. To save time, you really could just go and define all the shapes that you want to add in and just put a little X in there and know for yourself that that's where you're going to be doing layers of ink, digital ink, of course, that will be exactly where the shading goes. But for the demonstration, I am adding in stuff and filling it in. Now, what you'll notice also is that I am adding shading to some areas where there are either no lines, or in a way, I'm reverting back to the very first sketch. And part of the reason is that, yet again, if you really, really think about it, the one thing that I have been constantly saying is we want to make sure that the drawing has real life. So I did not etch a single thing really in stone at any point. What I ended up doing was leaving indications, leaving some landmarks, leaving little things for me to revert back to and either choose to use them or not use them. But the thing is that while I was working on every single layer of this piece, I was giving myself options. And ultimately, that's really what you want to do as an artist. Make sure that you have a lot of options. Make sure to keep the work flexible, even at this point, and this will allow you the luxury of making changes and enhancing the illustration. So, I feel at this point the rendering and shading looks pretty solid. For our next clip, we are going to be adding a simple costume to our character and really allow our hero to take final form. I'll see you there.